NZXT Cam. Monitor your games while playing. To learn more about it, check out the description. Hey everyone, it is the Angry Honey Badger here, and it's time to take a look at the tier list for patch 6.7. Now, it is that time where we talk about the tier list and we talk about all that fun stuff. And realistically, in the past few patches, there really haven't been a lot of champions that have been nerfed into the ground or buffed into a new god mode, really, you could say. I mean, there have been changes, obviously, but nothing like catastrophically huge. So that's one thing to, think about. The next thing I'm going to say is, despite the lack of changes to champions, a meta shift has really kind of happened. New champions are rising to power due to other champions being picked, and that causes a flux within the tier. Within specific tiers within the whole list itself, honestly. So we're going to basically look at that because patch 6.7 wasn't necessarily the world's biggest patch. So, that's not necessarily a terrible thing. That just means, honestly, the game's in a pretty good spot, or at least where they want it for now. Also, all teams within the professional leagues are in playoffs, and they don't like to do massive changes before those, so that's another reason why the past couple patches haven't been huge. So let's first jump into the S tier and see where the champions are starting to fall. So within the S tier, the champions I'm going to talk about here are Echo and the mid lane. Now, we'll get to the mid lane in just a second, but let's talk about Echo. Echo has seen a dominant rise to power recently in solo queue and professional play around the world, all over the place. What has happened is people have basically discovered with the current items that are strong and with his playstyle and his natural kit, especially having percentage damage on his auto attacks every third attack, Echo's quite strong. If you just build him straight tank, he never dies, and he has his ultimate to escape to never die as well, or to get health back and continue tanking and fighting, and he has plenty of damage to continue to kill people. The other things that help make this all come together and work are the facts that he's very sticky and he is very fast. He gets a lot of movement speed, and he has a lot of good slow and stun, available within his kit. It's just too much for one champion. I'm not expecting him to stay up here forever. He will be addressed in a future patch and will be nerfed somehow. I'm assuming they'll nerf base numbers and they'll buff AP ratios to push him off of the tank side of things, or at least nerf his damage as a tank. We'll see how long that lasts, but Echo's insanely strong. About the only reason to play draft currently, not the only reason to play draft obviously, but playing draft right now, you may notice he's getting banned every single game, along with a lot of other tanky champions such as Nautilus and Maokai even, maybe Malphite and even Trundle. So a lot of champions getting nerfed that are tanky champions right now. Now as for the mid lane, is something a lot of people like to debate on the tier list, and that's not surprising. Everybody likes to play mid, or not everybody, but I'm saying a lot of people like to play mid. Now because of that, they all like to argue where their champion should fall. I don't actually play tons of mid. I mean, I do. You see it in streams, but I don't focus on me just wanting to play mid, which actually I think gives me a better handle on the mid lane meta and the way it's currently being played. But right now, the way mid lane is shaping up to look is a champion gets picked, and the champion that gets picked against them is almost always going to be a counter pick. Now, lower down in the list, for example, is Vel Koz. I have him in B tier currently, and I think that's where he was last time. Some people may argue, well, he gets picked in competitive, but the times he gets picked in competitive is when he's almost always just as a counter answer to Azir, who I have in A tier. Now, does this mean that Vel Koz is better than Azir? Well, in some cases, yes, but in some cases, no. It's mostly just in the counter matchup. But on a general team, Azir will be a better champion because of the current state of Azir. This is the way the whole mid lane kind of looks right now. It's very a counter-pick lane. It also works that way within the professional scene too. If you look at what happens to teams and what's going on, such as, Bjergsen wants last pick because he wants to counter and win that lane because he's a good player, and if he gets a good champion for a counter, he can snowball one specific lane. So that's really what the big thing is in competitive, and a lot of the champions in mid lane that were strong have seen nerfs this season without a lot of them seeing buffs, and that's in preparation for a lot of mage changes coming up that are being introduced. You'll see more of that coming up on the PvE, and I'll probably even post a little bit of that content in the future too, and we can all be ready for those changes. But right now, it's really hard for me to peg a very top tier of S mid laners. Orianna's the only one who's really gotten a buff. Lulu's seen some nerfs, but she's still insanely impactful, and Quinn's just that oddball who can make impactful plays, and that's why those three are currently sitting up here in S. But I was really tempted to just remove all mid laners from S tier, because right now I think it's that open up to anyone to take that new spot. So we'll see changes coming to this in the future. It's just something I think I should definitely address, because it's important to know how the shift in the meta and the changes to champions and the future changes coming to mages and items will be impactful in shaping the way that the rest of the list falls and the way it currently is sitting. Moving things on to the A tier, what we're going to talk about here is going to be Maokai, and we're also going to talk about Leblanc. Now, I know Maokai got a buff at the last patch. People weren't too excited at where I had him in the list, and I agree. I think I even mentioned him in the last one, saying, I bet this is too low, and you'll probably see him jump up next patch. I don't like to jump the gun on tier lists too often. I mean, I did last patch with saying that Karma is an S tier support, and hey, guess what? She's getting picked constantly, and she has a great win rate, and she's doing amazing in that role, so that one is fairly accurate. But, you know, that was one of the big gambles I've taken, but I don't typically like to take the big gambles. Maokai is a very, very strong champion again, because of the changes that he did kind of need to fall back into that uber super tank in the top lane. The changes were very, very effective, and they have brought him up the list quite a bit. I was actually very tempted to throw him into S tier. Who knows? Maybe next patch we'll see if he gets any changes, or if they're going to nerf him down just a tiny bit, because he is quite strong. But that's something we will take a look at in the forthcoming patches. Also, if you are watching this video, there will be a Maokai build probably later this week, so check that out. And yeah, you can watch it and it'll be fun. As for the other champion, that was Leblanc. Now, LeBlanc is floating that line of almost making it into S tier, or at least is the top of A tier currently. She did see some changes earlier in the season to get her missile speeds back up. Very impactful and very helpful for her to have that. I think the reason why I am favoring her up a little bit more than a few other mid laners right now is a few of the other ones have seen nerfs. Lux and Ahri both kind of seen nerfs. Azir's really just rising back up to prominence a little bit with some recent buffs. But LeBlanc, despite a tankier meta coming into form, she does okay against tanks, but really all she is there for is to be the one person to solo out all the damage threats, and then then she can brawl with the rest of her team to get rid of the tanks after the fact. But she is there 100% to annihilate squishy targets, and she does a quite amazing job at doing that. So after her buffs back up to her basically old state, which made her amazing, she's back up to a pretty good spot currently in the game, so someone definitely still pretty strong. Moving on to the B tier, the two champions we'll talk about here are going to be Vel Koz and Ash. And we did kind of already talk about Vel Koz. I'm highlighting him because we mentioned him previously and about how the meta works. I don't think he's like a bad champion. I know a lot of people know he's not personally a favorite of mine. I don't like how he's immobile to do most of his work. And that was a major problem with old school Xerath back in the day when Xerath was quite terrible. He did decent damage, but honestly he wasn't that good because he basically stood still in fights and then basically was asking to die. It's always terrible when you have to CC yourself. It's just not good, to say the least. I think that's kind of obvious though. But Vel Koz, as I talked about, is a specific counter to Azir. So if you are seeing the Azir, Vel Koz is somebody who can do quite good against him. The reason for this is he can push into Azir pretty well. He's got good clear, as we know, something that Azir also has, but you can usually push in Azir a little bit quicker, and then it's actually difficult in some cases for Azir to do last hitting and clearing under his turret because of the way his soldiers work. So the Vel Koz is a good answer to Azir if you are looking for somewhat of a counter to an Azir. Also can work well against some other champions too, or if you just naturally get good with him, obviously that's never a bad thing either. As for the next champion that I said was Ash, Ash is another champion who I think surprises people more often than not. She's kind of mildly forgotten. She's pretty old school. She did get her rework, but she's mildly forgotten that she can do impactful damage and has a good kit all around. She's one of those champions who I think could jump up a little bit. We'll see if she gets more play in competitive and in just all queues in general, or if any changes to ADCs or items or anything comes into effect. ADCs really haven't seen too many changes this season. I mean, little tweaks, nothing major. It was the big stuff, you know, going into the season with all the massive ADC reworks. But she's got great initiation. She honestly has good damage and some pretty good map control and good crowd control. And really, she's not bad. There's nothing bad about Ash. In fact, if you want to play her, she's quite good in some cases and can be pretty safe if you hold on to your ultimate for defensive ways. Although that's not always recommended. You can use it as a great initiation, but you can use it obviously as defense if you really need to. But Ash is a champion who have moved up just a tiny bit, while Kog'Maw and Kalista have fallen behind her. Kog'Maw's nerfs, you know, obviously he was Godmaw for, you know, a couple patches, but then they had to nerf him down because it was just a little too strong. And then Kalista's just kind of been just getting nerfed too much. She's not bad by any means, but with the amount of effort it takes and your team mentality and all types of stuff, she's fallen off a little bit, and just in general nerfs as well, so that's why. Onto the C tier. Now, I know there aren't a million champions in here, and I haven't highlighted any specifically. I don't usually talk about anybody specific in the C tier. We just kind of talk about the tier overall. I'm going to try to move down some champions. I know some people have complained there's too many champions in groups A and B. Well, that's because the game's actually much better balanced than a lot of people believe it to be. That's a good thing. If a lot of champions fall in A to B, that means a lot of champions are viable. And you'll probably notice that that's what happens in a lot of games. Player skill always outweighs champion strength, like 98% of the time, until one thing which is massively stupid strong shows up, also known as Tank Echo currently. That's your one exception, and there's your, you know, 99% of all the other champions fitting in fairly well. C tier is something I'm going to be looking at. A lot of these champions, as we know, see small tweaks, or Riot doesn't always know how to tweak them or change them, or they're in need of buffs. I mean, they're okay, but they're definitely not as good as AB. We're going to keep an eye on this. Tarek's down here for now, but as we know, his rework is just around the corner, so he will probably get thrown into F tier for, you know, one patch as we figure out where he's going to fall, which lane he's going to be predominantly played in, because right now it's looking like he could either be a top, a support, or even a jungler. So we'll have to keep an eye on that, but this is the C tier for now. We'll keep an eye on it, and we'll see how it continues to shape and see which champions will probably fall down into it, because I'll probably try to move a couple champions down, because there are a few in A and B, but that's not a bad thing. As we stated, it means the game's balanced, and that's a good thing. And finally, onto F tier. There's only two champions in here right now, and that is Teemo and Mordekaiser. You know the reasons. It's not because they're necessarily bad. It's just because they're difficult to place. I swear one day I will find a place for you, Mordekaiser, but Mordekaiser pre-rework probably would have been like a B or C tier for top lane or mid lane. Probably B, low B is my guess. But after the rework and he became a bot laner, man, I don't ever see anybody hardly playing bot anymore. And when I see him played, he's played top now, and people play terribly with him. And I still play him in the jungle because I still think his best place right now is the jungle, but I think we need Riot to address him, really, before he goes anywhere. Teemo's Teemo. I dare not give him a rank, although something I've noticed while playing on my Smurf recently is everybody thinks Teemo's amazing for low level, and he's not. And I'm seeing people play him as an AD carry, and it's not good. Don't play him as an AD carry. You play him as a top laner to just split push and piss off one person. That's all he's good for. That's all you need. Don't play him as an ADC, please. But that is the tier list for patch 6.7. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know I did. If you hated where I placed champions, well, that just sucks, and that's unfortunate, but that's fine. You can rage about it in the comments if you wish to. If you liked something or want to talk about something or have questions about something, also, the comments is the place where you can do that, and I will hopefully be able to answer them if it is a cohesive question, which sometimes they are and sometimes they're not. But yes, that's the tier list. I hope League is going fine and dandy for all of you, and best of luck in all your future matches. I'll see you guys in the next video.